guys, welcome to another day of Mishmas. SONIA G has come out with a holiday brush set. This is limited edition and they are of a smaller size. So you can consider this a travel brush set from SONIA G, which I have been long awaiting. Of course, we're not traveling at the moment, but hopefully we're going to be traveling soon. And when we do, these brushes are going to come in very, very handy. Hey, future Michelle here. I completely forgot to mention the details of this brush set. So it is going to be releasing today, a little bit later on, and I will have a link down below as to whether you can sign up for it or whether the product page is up. Go ahead and check that out. Follow me on Instagram. I always post on my Instagram stories new releases when they come out. So definitely check there. And I believe the price of the set is $125. This is limited edition, and I also wanted to mention that these brushes were sent to me from Beautylish and SONIA G to review for you guys. I completely neglected to mention all of this stuff. Anyway, sorry, back to the video. So this brush set consists of 5 brushes. There's 2 face brushes, 3 eye brushes, but what is most notable about them are the handles. So this is Keyaki. There's a very long name, but Keyaki for short is a type of wood from a Japanese tree, and it's a slightly harder wood. If you go to SONIA G's website, her blog, Sweet Makeup Temptations, which I will leave a link to down below in my description box, she writes about it much more in depth than I'm going to talk about it. But the handles are made of this gorgeous wood. It's really, really beautiful, and it has been buffed and sanded to such a smooth finish. It almost feels like silk. It's actually really incredible. And then all the ferrules are this matte black, which matches this finish really beautifully. So what we're going to do today is just talk about this set, and then we're going to talk about each individual brush. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of each individual brush, and then I'm going to show you me applying some makeup with each brush, and then we'll do some comparisons. So like I mentioned, this set is comprised of 5 brushes. So 2 face brushes, 3 eye brushes. The face brushes all have mixed fibers, and the hairs in the eyeshadow brushes are all white undyed goat hair. The handle lengths for each, you can see, is much shorter. So let me hold it up next to a regular SONIA G brush. So this is her base 1 brush. This is the mini base brush. And you can see how much more petite these are. So these are, like I mentioned, very, very travel friendly, which is really fantastic. And all of these brushes are, I think, a great pick for a travel set because they all are multi-purpose. So for the face, we have this mini base brush, which is like a small kabuki brush, and it is made up of goat hair and synthetic hairs. So you can work this with cream products, which is really great. And this classic face brush is comprised of undyed and dyed goat hair. So you can only use this with powder products. And so this is great for powdering, obviously, for kind of like setting concealer, blush, contour, all sorts of things. So great multi-purpose brushes. Same with the eye brushes. I find all 3 of these that she picked to include in this set very, very versatile. And all 3 of these brushes are brushes that appear in her Sky set. So we have the Jumbo Blender. The only difference is this is in white undyed goat hair, and the Jumbo Blender that's part of the Sky set is in dyed goat hair. So this can be used for powder and cream products. There's also the mini booster brush, which has very quickly become one of my kind of favorite essential brushes. So here it is in the Sky set. And again, we have dyed goat hair, undyed goat hair, and undyed goat hair you can use with cream and powder products. And then lastly, we have the flat definer brush, and here it is in the Sky set. So I think it's great that she picked these really versatile shapes and then basically switched out the hairs to make them even more versatile. So those are the 3 eye brushes, and this is the entire set. I think they're wonderful, wonderful picks. There's something about like Japanese brush sets that I feel like there's always 1 or 2 brushes in there that I don't necessarily want. A lot of the time it's like a lip brush. I just don't use lip brushes that much. I probably should, but I just don't use lip brushes that much, or like a spoolie is included, and I don't really use that much either. So I was really happy to see 5 brushes that I know I will get a lot of use out of and will be very, very handy if I'm on a trip. So let's start with the classic face brush. Like I said, I have foundation down, but I don't have any powder down. And I'd like to see how effective this brush is for powder. It is definitely smaller than the typical powder brush that I would use to powder my entire face. This Chikuhodo powder brush is probably the typical size that I would use, so you can see how much smaller it is. But let's see how effective this is. I do also want to mention that when you see these brushes here that I'm holding, I have not washed them yet and I have not used them yet. This brush will definitely bloom a little bit, so it won't be as tightly packed looking as it looks right now. So I've got my Sicily pressed powder. Picks up product beautifully, of course. Really, really soft. Silky, silky soft. And again, this one is mixed dyed and undyed goat hair. And while I definitely feel like, obviously, I have to take a little bit more time to powder my entire face, what's nice is I can really get into crevices like this and like right underneath my eye if I need to, very, very easily. So does the trick. I think if I traveled with this brush, I wouldn't feel like I would have to bring an additional powder brush, which is really great. All right, so before we move on to the next brush, I do want to show you some comparisons to this brush that this brush kind of reminded me of when I first took a look at it, and that is the Suku cheek brush. It has a very, very similar hair length and shape. Now, when I touch these, so the Suku one that I have is made out of squirrel hair. It's a little bit minkier, softer, silkier than the goat hair. And SONIA G's brush is definitely more dense. This one is a very light, wispy kind of brush, but the shape is so similar to me. And I feel like the ferrule size is pretty much the same. The width and the depth of it. They're both like oval shaped. So this is the first brush that came to mind, is her mini cheek brush. And this one is a bit smaller. So this is part of the Sky face set. And this mini cheek brush has the two fibers as well, the dyed and the undyed goat hair. So you can see that the mini cheek is pretty much just like a mini version of this classic face brush. It has a more prominent pinch in the ferrule here. They're both oval though, so this one is just a little bit flatter, but like same proportions as the classic face. And then one last comparison because, you know, in my mind it just kind of reminded me of it, and that's the Wangos airbrush. So here is the airbrush. Again, this one is made out of squirrel hair, so it is a little bit minkier than the goat hair, but like the hair length is very similar. The brush size is a little bit different. The airbrush is wider and a little bit flatter. And also the angle at which like the hairs were laid in here is a much steeper kind of angle. You can see a lot of the ends of the hairs start down here. So this is a brush that you would use like in a flatter way versus this classic face brush where the shortest ones are probably all the way up here. And so this is one that you could use to buff and to swipe this way versus like a sweeping motion. I mean, you could use it that way, of course, but that's really how this one is meant. That's why the hairs are laid in here in a very specific way. So anyway, just wanted to compare these two for you. All right, next up, let's talk about the mini base brush. So this is the other face brush that's part of the set, and this is the one that has goat hair and synthetic hair. So you can use this with cream and powder products. And I was on SONIA G's blog, Sweet Makeup Temptations, and she talks about how you could, you know, buff in foundation with this. I probably would not use a brush like this for foundation. I want to use this for like cream blushes, cream bronzers, cream highlights. That's what I see when I see this brush. So that's what I wanted to use this brush for. For foundation, I just feel like for me, my own personal taste, it's just a little bit too small. And again, this is a travel set, so you probably don't want to travel with all of your brushes. At least I wouldn't want to travel with all of my brushes. But if it was between this and maybe just putting my foundation on with like my fingers, I would probably just put it on with my fingers and reserve this brush for like cream cheek products. So I went ahead and grabbed the Kjær Weis cream blush in Sun Touched. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick up some product. Just going to swirl it in there and kind of like stamp it on, whatever this motion is. Stamp it on. I like the density of this brush. I feel like when I look at the hair lengths here, they're a little bit longer than the average kind of mini kabuki brush. And I have a bunch that I'll compare it to. It's a little bit longer. And so there's a little bit more give. And sometimes I just feel like when brushes are a little bit too dense, when I'm laying product down, it may be very effective, but I feel like maybe I'm moving stuff underneath. Like sometimes it's just a little too dense. But this really has a nice kind of fluid motion to it because the hairs are just a touch longer in my mind. And it's just not quite as like dense as some kabuki brushes that I've used. This brush is perfect for cheek products. Really, really effortless application. Wow, the application of this cream cheek product is probably the fastest I've ever experienced. That was very, very efficient. And I know SONIA G really focuses on the efficiency of her brushes. She doesn't want to spend all day applying her makeup. She wants the experience to be really efficient and really, really pleasant. And it always is. If you guys have SONIA G brushes, you know what I'm talking about. It's just, I mean, your makeup just goes on so quickly, and it was like the best the best brush experience ever. Anyway, let me compare these to a few cream cheek brushes that I have. Many of you ask all the time, like, what my favorite cream cheek brush is. And at the moment, I've been using the Smashbox cream cheek brush a lot, and you can see the similarities here. This one is 100% synthetic versus it being mixed. And I think the mixture, the like having the natural hairs in there to really help the pickup and the lay down of the product really is what is like the secret in this like efficient application, because it just blends out the cream product like perfectly. But you can see that the hair length is very similar. The diameter of the brush itself, of the ferrule, is pretty much the same. So I'm not surprised I love this brush so much, because this one is the one that I reach for cream products. And then the brush that I have that's the most similar, like overall, to this mini base brush is this Kokuten brush from Hakuhodo. They actually call this an eyeshadow brush, which, I mean, I guess it could serve as an eyeshadow brush, but I've always used it more as like a cheek brush. Anyway, here it is next to the SONIA G mini base brush. So these are the little kabuki brushes that I was talking about that I find sometimes they're so dense and they're so, you know, packed with hair that I worry that I'm just kind of moving product around versus laying it down and blending it in. So I really prefer how the hair lengths on the SONIA G are just a little bit longer. Do you see that? Versus the Hakuhodo. So this one has just a little bit more movement to it. But this one, just FYI, from Hakuhodo, is made out of ebony wood. And this one, just for your reference, this one is made out of squirrel and synthetic hair. So it's a blend like the SONIA G one, but the squirrel, again, it's just a little bit minkier than goat. And then just another quick comparison to another like kind of mini, this is actually more of like a midi instead of a mini, but like a midi flat top kabuki brush. And this is the T3 from Chikuhodo. So here it is next to SONIA G's mini base. And you can see that it is wider. But the hair lengths are a little bit longer, but because there's so much more hair in there, because it is just a bigger brush, it's a very, very dense brush. But I think I have a new favorite cream cheek brush for sure. Actually, while we're at it, I'm gonna apply some of the Keyur Weiss highlighter with this brush as well. But yeah, I like that. I am brushing it kind of over my blush too. I really want to see if I feel like the brush is kind of moving the product underneath. It's not. It's not. Awesome. Wow, this is a really beautiful brush. Could be my favorite out of the whole set, but try not to play favorites. All right, let's move on to the eye brushes. Okay, so we already talked about how they are basically recreations of her Sky eye brushes, just in different hairs. So these are all undyed goat versus the dyed goat. And I love this jumbo blender. It reminds me of my Near and Dear worker brushes. And since I can use these with cream shadows, I really want to try it out. So I've got my Trinity London mystery eyeshadow here. You guys know I've been loving this one a lot. Picked up plenty of product easily. Blends it out beautifully. Again, just super, super quick application. I never feel like I have to fuss when I'm using a SONIA G brush. Like that was so fast and so smooth. All right, I do want to try a powder product with these brushes. So with the mini booster, I'm gonna grab one of the Wang Goss shadows from his Imperial Topaz palette. I'm gonna go in with this shade down here and just kind of deepen up my outer corner. Again, just so easy. And I remember when this mini booster brush came out for the first time as part of the Sky set, I remember thinking, I wonder why it's called a booster brush. I would have called it, you know, mini blender or something. And it's because it picks up so much product. I think of it as like boosting the level of pigmentation that it's laying down. And it really does. It's like this little mini power-packed kind of brush. It just lays down so much product. Well, picks up and lays down so much product. It's so amazing for this like little teeny tiny booster brush. Let me hold it up next to a regular blending brush. Here is SONIA G's Blender Pro brush, and here is the mini booster next to it. Right, it looks like this little this little innocent little thing, but it really, really packs a punch. It picks up so much pigment. It's fantastic. I totally forgot to do some comparisons for the Jumbo Blender, but I think because these brushes have already basically been released the same shape, I just didn't think of it. Anyway, I did want to compare it to the Worker 1 and the Worker 2. So the Worker 1 and the Worker 2 are basically the same brush with two different hair types, the dyed and the undyed goat hair. So here it is next to the Jumbo Blender. Let me just hold up the Worker 1. So here's a Jumbo Blender. So it's basically just like a blown up worker brush. It's a little bit wider, it's a little bit thicker, and the hairs, are they a little bit longer? They may be the same, but I don't know. I don't even know if you can tell the difference, but it's just a little bit bigger than the Worker 1. And wow, this brush is dirty. Sorry. This eyeshadow brush from Chikuhodo, I've used quite a bit. It's part of the Z series, and I can never remember the number because it's not on the actual brush. So I will leave it down below in the description box. But this Z brush from Chikuhodo is one of my favorite eyeshadow brushes. It's squirrel hair, and it's just like an oversized like shader brush, similar to the Jumbo Blender. It's not quite as chubby, it's not quite as thick, but it's kind of like an oversized brush, but it is still bigger than the Jumbo Blender. But I thought if you guys have seen me use this before, if you have it yourself, you'd be interested in a comparison there. So the thickness is about the same, but the width of the Chikuhodo Z brush is wider. All right, and as for the mini booster, I really don't have any comparisons to this brush. I mean, I have some kind of like petite kind of blender brushes, but they're just not the same. They don't have the density that the mini booster has. It's just a very unique brush, not in appearance, but in practice, a very, very unique brush. Okay, and last but not least, we have the flat definer, and this is a very, very flat, dense kind of brush, great for defining. So I'm gonna go back into this Wayne Goss palette, and I'm gonna go into the black shade here, and I'm just going to use the tips of the brush and then run that along my lash line and use it as eyeliner. This is such a great versatile brush too, because while you can use it as a liner brush, it really is like a very mini flat shader. So you can use it obviously for like metallic shades or cream shadows or anything like on your lid. But, well, I already put black on here, but let me just show you like the shape of this brush. So here's the flat definer, the Sky Series version. For me, for my anatomy, it actually works beautifully as like if I want to highlight that tear duct area. It's like something about the shape of this brush is very similar to like the shape of this part of my eye. So if I get a little bit of highlight, actually, I'm going to use this shade right here. If I just get it on one side of the brush there, and then I kind of just place it down right on that tear duct area, I get this like perfect like shape of highlight right there. Something I actually just recently discovered, and I've been grabbing for this brush to do that ever since. So I was really happy to see that SONIA G included this in her kit. So I would probably do the inner highlight first and then go in with a dark color. Otherwise, if you're on a trip, it's hard to like constantly be washing your brushes, but that's what I would do. I would highlight first and then go in with a deep shade like this to line my eyes. Desperately need some lip balm. I probably should have put this on the beginning of the video. I'm just gonna throw on my By Terry Balm de Rose in Toffee Cream. Just gonna tap some on. All right, and that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions about these brushes. Of course, I will link to SONIA G's blog down below in my description box, sweetmakeuptemptations.com, which is always chock full of information. I mean, not just about her brushes, but about makeup brushes in general. I mean, the best read ever. So give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in tomorrow's Mishmash video.